Now, I'm very pleased to welcome back a fantastic handicapper, an NFL contest winner in Brady Kannon, a host at Sports Grid and a writer at CBS Sportsline and Golf.com. You can follow Brady on X at Las Vegas Golfer. Brady, here we are. We're just getting near the holidays. The weather's changing. How are you doing this time of year, sir?
I'm doing great, Kiev. Thank you so much for having me on. It's usually once or twice a year that I get that text, "Hey, can you come on?" And it's always really cool to spend some time with you. And I appreciate the ongoing invitation, my friend.
Oh, ditto, my friend, ditto. I don't want to bother you too much, but you do make time for me, and I appreciate that more. So thank you for doing that. I love how you go on Sports Grid and talk. I've been on Sports Grid quite a few times. It's one of my favorite stations to listen to and watch, and you're just all over the place, man. And you have this awesome contest show too, and I always see you guys do that. I've listened to a few. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that show?
I really love that. And I love how it started too. Of course, my friends, Mike Pritchard and James Salinas. We've worked together for a long time. And it was 2 years ago during the off season in the summer, we were just kind of shooting the breeze. And somebody mentioned, gosh, how we used to work together. And then they were like, we should do a show together about football contests or something, kind of half jokingly. And I was like, maybe that's a good idea. And how contests have just absolutely exploded. I mean, especially here in Las Vegas, Derek Stevens, you're there every year, during like contest weekend or whatever it is. And
Yep.
I mean, you got almost $20 million in Circus Survivor, and the Westgate's adding contest. Their college contest is really cool. So,
So
I
fun.
mean, the desire, the appetite for contests is just, through the roof. And we said, well, let's do a show about it. And knock on wood, here in our second season, we're getting all kinds of traction, and people really seem to be receptive. And you know how it is, Kiev. As long as you're providing good information, I don't care if you agree with us or disagree with us, follow or fade, as long as you're learning something and taking that information away as actionable or insightful or whatever, then you've got a pretty good product. And I think we provide that each and every week. Myself, you mentioned a contest winner, James Salinas, a contest winner as well, really has been much more successful than me in contest play over the years. And our styles are, we oftentimes land on the same games, but we get there with different paths. And then we have Mike Pritchard, who's a 9-year NFL veteran who has the player's perspective. So I think when you listen to that show, you get a lot of different angles and approaches to these games, and it works. So, we're going to keep doing it, and hopefully it just gets even more popular.
Absolutely. And it's such a great mix of people and individuals there, obviously, with an ex NFL player like Pritch. So that is a wonderful show to have. And do you ever, what's your thoughts on Thursdays? Jumping in on Thursdays, especially later in the year with all these injuries. Is this usually a complete no for you? Wait till the final deadline? Or is there just sometimes when a line is so off, you're like, man, I got to dive in here?
Rarely do I find that where I gotta dive in here, like you say, and for the against the spread contests, both in my own personal betting and in the contests, I rarely play Thursday games. Every now and then you land on one that you feel really good about, but almost never in the against the spread contest, because as you got to turn in your whole card. If you're going to play the Thursday game, you got to turn in all 5 picks. And usually by Thursday afternoon, I'm not necessarily ready to land on 5 games. Now, that being said, we used it in Circus Survivor, a Thursday game this year, and did so successfully with the Buffalo Bills in their first meeting when they beat the Miami Dolphins. Of course, they'll play again this week in Miami. But so on Survivor, I kind of sometimes really like the Thursday game. But the against the spread, both personally and in contests, I pretty much stay away from it almost 100% of the time.
Yeah, I usually do too. In the college contest, I was doing great in 60th place until last week, and I had a terrible week at 1-5-1. But there was one week that I had a bad week that I jumped in early on a Thursday game, and then not only did I lose the Thursday game, and I thought I was such an edge on it, I found out some serious information on Sam Levitt not playing at Utah.
Oh,
And I was just
yeah.
like, what am I doing? I broke a rule. I
Yeah,
decided to do
yeah.
it. And so it always ends up biting me. So, man, I'm not even looking at the circuit
We
line
need
for
a
tonight.
shirt that has, like the X on Thursdays. No Thursdays.
No, Thursday. Don't be tempted. Don't be tempted. So much information comes out after Friday. So it is so important. Great point on that one. Well, that's fun. I love contest season. How many contests are you in?
Let's see. We're in Circa Million. We're no longer in Circa Survivor, unfortunately.
Atlantis got me 2 weeks ago in Survivor.
Oh,
So
okay. So you made a pretty good run. God, what a anomaly that game was. My goodness. We were on Atlanta against the spread in that game. Just a complete egg that they're a really hard team to figure out. I was just crunching a bunch of numbers before we came on, and their numbers don't look that. I think a lot of it really has to do. I think a lot of it goes back to Raheem Morris. I just don't think he's that good of a coach. Now, is he a good coordinator? An assistant coach. With the special teams, the defensive backs, whatever it is. I don't think he's too bad at all. And I've heard he's a great guy. I don't know the man personally, but not everybody's a CEO. And I think it speaks a lot to Raheem Morris's inability or inefficiencies as a head coach when you have a team that has that much talent and makes the Buffalo Bills look stupid on one day, and then the next day they lose at home to the Miami Dolphins of all people, and get shut out by the Carolina Panthers. That team is really weird. But yeah, we were victims in week 5 when Arizona lost to Tennessee. That was wild. And then that same week, Buffalo lost to New England. We're also in the Circa Million, the contest that we play on the contest show. We're Survivor, Circa Million, and the Westgate Super Contest. Yeah. And then aside from that, I'm also in the Super Contest College with a couple of different entries. So yeah, pretty much got the board covered, my friend. And we love contests, right? I mean, gosh, I encourage people too. They're so fun. So fun.
They are so fun, and the prize is so big. It's like there's something,
and it really doesn't cost you that much. When you think about it, you spread it over 20 weeks or whatever. It's probably a lot less expensive than the weekly betting that you're doing.
Yeah, especially if you're winning or losing. If you're not winning, it's like you can cut your unit size a little bit and just get in a contest because you're playing anyway, right? You still got something on that game. You still got that. I guess that fix, right? That gambling fix that you want. I mean, sorry, we're a gambling show. We got to be honest here. We can get into the whole aspect of everything you do in life is gambling, but one thing we like to do is sports, and contests are a lot like it, but it is a different strategy. And this is why you guys should watch this show, because you can learn about what's different about just betting ATS and playing strategy in a contest. So that's the ins and outs of a great show like that. So love that. Speaking of the NFL, who's your top 5 teams right now? And I want to ask that because I've noticed some change in mine over the past few weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up that question, because I was actually just, and I think it's a topic that we think about on a regular basis during the NFL season, but I was kind of diving in a little bit further just last night, and I came up with 4. The Lions, and not necessarily in any order. The Lions, the Bills, the Rams, and the Chiefs. Those are my top 4. And then I dropped down after that, and I think the Ravens, the Seahawks, and the Colts are really close. I think Denver's almost there defensively, certainly. The Ravens, the Seahawks, and the Colts would probably be my next 3. But I was thinking about this, Kiev, and like when we get to the postseason, and the Lions, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Rams, those are basically the 4 favorites. It's real chalky. I'm not, breaking any ground there. That's not earth-shattering news. But I think those 4 teams, when we get to crunch time and they're in the postseason, I think they beat Philadelphia. They beat Seattle. They beat Indianapolis. So I think those teams, they're just really strong. They've got one little extra notch in my book than all of the contenders at this point.
I think you're right, and I agree with the most of that. I have it basically Buffalo, just based on pure numbers and not thoughts. It's Indianapolis 2 for me, and then I have KC, Baltimore, and the Rams all third. shortly under them, Seattle, Detroit, and Philly. I mean, it's
There you
just
go. Yeah.
it's such a close margin. For example, from my 8th team, or you can just say the tie between Seattle, Philly, and Seattle to Buffalo, it's 1.75 points. It's so close. Like that means that's a coin flip, a 1.5 spread, a 1.75 spread. That's nothing, it's just, so I think it's really up in the air.
You're exactly right. I mean, okay, what did we see the Lions when they went to Kansas City? The Lions were a favorite, right? They were a favorite at Kansas City. Now that was before Rashee Rice came back and all that. If I recall, I believe Kansas City was about a 2.5-point dog then, and they won that game outright. The Lions lost again this week, but when the Lions play like the Lions, I think they can absolutely beat anybody in the NFL and probably trounce anybody in the NFL. I mean, they have another gear that really hasn't gone away, even though Ben Johnson did go away as their offensive coordinator. We saw early on in the loss to the Packers, we're like, okay, just what we thought, the loss of the coordinators. And then, a few weeks in a row, and they're just hammering people again. They have a huge ceiling, I believe. And they're playing pretty darn good defense. Aiden Hutchinson back on that pass rush is a big deal. Buffalo kind of has everything going except for the ability to stop the run. And it looked like they figured that out a little bit against Kansas City last week, but Kansas City also doesn't have a great rushing attack. So, and that's kind of their Achilles heel. The Rams, I don't know if they have an Achilles heel. They might be the best team, in my opinion. They also play in a really tough division, and that kind of probably wears on them a little bit, playing the 49ers, which they'll do this week, and the Seattle Seahawks of the world. So those are my top 4. But yeah, numbers-wise, the Colts are absolutely right there. Numbers-wise, the Seahawks are absolutely right there. But like I say, I think when we get to the playoffs, I don't know if the Seahawks or the Colts are quite ready to knock off one of these big boys just yet.
I agree with you. We've seen enough Sam Darnold at the end of the playoffs or the beginning of the playoffs or whatever end of the season. Yeah, that was just an ultimate choke last. And I think people are going to get kicking themselves when they have those Seattle tickets come end of the season, beginning of the playoffs. Well, let's get into a little buy low, sell high. And I like to talk about this. It doesn't mean that we're betting our fading team this week. Maybe it's like the number's wrong, or it could be you're doing it this week. Whatever you like, whatever direction you want to take, undervalued, overvalued, who we buying low or selling high on.
Yeah, it's again interesting that you asked this question, because I think it's very appropriate this particular week, this time during the season. I think we're starting, and I think week to week, you always want to identify that type of thing. I think that's the way the NFL is a little bit. And I think maybe a classic situation was last week with Carolina. What was giving them 13 points was obviously too much. Packers were in a bad situation, this and that and the other. But I think big picture, I think the Chargers are a sell high right now. I mean, we know they haven't had Rashawn Slater all season long, so that doesn't really change things. But now with Joe Alt gone as well, and we've seen them really struggle when he's been out before, and then when he came back, they beat the Vikings. They handled the Titans. They stubbed their toe a little bit, but they handled the Titans. But with him gone, it's without both of those guys, they are really different. And the young running back that they got out of North Carolina, he's no longer around. Najee Harris. So unfortunately, injury is probably such a determining factor in the NFL. And it's really come to haunt the Los Angeles Chargers here now with a lot of their players. And even in the secondary, they're missing some guys as well. So I think and I actually played the Steelers this week plus 3 points. And the Steelers are not all that necessarily either, but I couldn't believe that the Chargers were favored by 3. I made it 1. And when I saw that it was 3, that immediately caught my attention. And again, back to your question, I think this is a team that just by the look of that line, should they be favored by 3? No, I think that's overinflation. I think they're getting too much credit. And again, without Joe Alt, I just really think they become a relatively average team, maybe a little bit better than average. Justin Herbert's great. Keenan Allen continues to do it, but I just don't think all the pieces are there for the Chargers. And they're a go against for me this week. And there might be more, until the market catches up when everybody understands that this team ain't what it used to was without these offensive linemen and their running game and what have you. I think you'll maybe see the prices change. I think the team that is on the rise that maybe you're getting a little bit of a discount on because of the way things started with poor performance and injury, and now where they're headed is the Baltimore Ravens. This team was, I believe, the favorite to win the Super Bowl before the season started. If they weren't the favorite, they were right there in the top three. And they got off to a 1-5 start, and injury again, a massive reason why all that was true. But now I think they're starting to get healthy and look the part again. And I made the number 4 this week against the Vikings. I don't think the Vikings are that great. There's a week-to-week situation for you. I think it's sell high in the Vikings this week because they just looked great last week in beating the Lions. But I don't really think they're that good. I think that was a division game and a one-off situation. We know Brian Flores can produce on defense for the most part on a regular basis. It's not always consistent, but we know he's got some very good performances up his sleeve for sure. But I like the Ravens here this week because, again, I think we're still getting a little bit of a discount on that team because of what they have done the past few weeks rather than what they've done most recently.
That's fair enough and a good answer. I actually make that game 3, but we'll get to that game. I have thoughts on. Well, here's a good thing for the Chargers. It sucks they lost Alt. Alt was a number 1 pick. He was fantastic. They at least tried to pick up somebody, right? And they picked up the guy from the
New Orleans. Yeah, I think Trevor Penning is his name.
Trevor Penning.
Pretty decent O lineman. Yeah,
he was their best offensive lineman, but we'll see how long it takes him to gel in this situation. I think that the only problem I have with the Steelers is the coach. But if I'm going to sell high on somebody, it's probably Tampa Bay based on their injuries. And
there we go with injuries again, right? No doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you see both of those players, not Godwin and Bucky Irving, not practicing again on Thursday, that means they're not playing because they have to have some time with the offense when you've had 4 weeks off. That means they're not playing. So if you like the Patriots, which I'm really leaning towards right now, I'm trying to decide if I just want to tease them up with somebody like the Eagles, or do I want to play them straight at 2.5? Maybe I just do one of those in the contest and tease it on the bet side. I'm trying to debate that now, but we'll get to that game and we'll talk more about it. But I think a sell high could be Tampa Bay because they've just been getting through based on just crazy Baker Mayfieldness, which now some of his best receivers are out and they're going to blanket the hell out of Ibuka. You know that. So we'll get into that one. Well, let's talk some NFL week 1 then. And kind of the way I like to do it is you can pass and not even say a word because there's always a long slate. This show live is on Thursday. We have a Thursday night game. So I don't have much to say about it, but I did do a prop in it. Any quick words, even though this podcast comes out on Friday?
Well, yeah, we'll see what the results are. The Raiders have taken some sharp money. It opened up 10, even 10.5 in some spots. It's now down pretty much to 9 across the board. I did even see an 8.5. Maybe they'll close 8.5.
Circa put it at 8.5.
Are they at 8.5 now? I made it 10. When I crunch all my stats, I come out to Denver minus 12. But, again, division game, short week. Again, we go back to the Thursday situations. I don't always like to bet Thursday games, and this is one I'll be staying away from. The Raiders also in a tough spot where they play an overtime game and lose. They play that almost the entire extended period there of overtime, and now they got to go on the road into elevation. But on the flip side, they've owned the Broncos in the last few years too. So just a lot of conflict there for me on this game, and I'll be staying away.
I make the game 10 as well. So I'm right with you on that one. Let's stay away and move on. Atlanta, the early game in Germany. And the Colts, what's funny is this kind of creeped to 6 for a minute, and then it shot right back to 6.5. I think maybe it was the Sauce Gardner news. I would assume that Sauce Gardner is going to play this week, right? I mean, it's not like you forget how to play cornerback, right? You just got to understand what a few different defensive calls might be and how they align to what your old coach did, right? It's not rocket science to just jump in there. My numbers say to bet the Colts. My scare is this: Atlanta is a team that has so much talent, and sometimes the talent overpowers the bad coaching, and sometimes it doesn't, as we saw a few weeks ago when I got toasted. So I could see the back door being open in Germany in a foreign place. Daniel Jones had his worst game in his history. He hasn't bounced back from those games, but that was a different coach. I don't know what to expect out of it. It's just a little bit too much variance for me to get involved.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. We've talked about the Falcons. They're extremely difficult to figure out. And like you say, a ton of talent and not the best coaching. And we see that inconsistency played out on the field. I also, we talk about, staying away from Thursday games. I'm not always ready to jump in on international games either. I think the travel is another factor that's very difficult to figure out. I think this is the first time. I think it's the first time that the Colts have ever played in Germany before. Daniel Jones. How many of these guys are really used to that type of thing? And what I also find odd here, like when I crunch my numbers, I come to the Colts -8. But my initial reaction was Colts at home would be 6. But we're on a neutral site here, which makes it for me 4.5. And if the Patriots were 5.5 at home and only beat the Falcons by 1, then why are the Colts 6.5 or 7? Are the Colts that much better than New England? So this one again, there, like you said, all kinds of variables here. Staying away.
Problem with last week is Atlanta outscored them 9-0 in the fourth quarter. That was covering all day until it wasn't. They sit and prevent and sit there and choke that away. And coaches do that in the NFL. They just know they'll sacrifice a big spread for a W any day just to get it out of there. And that's what we saw. It hurt me a little bit too last week. One of my few losses. So let's move on to the next game. Buffalo versus the Miami Dolphins. Miami's +9.5, 50.5 as a total. You have the floor, Brady.
I was really waiting for this to get to 10, and I've started to see some signs that it might not. So I went ahead and bought it to 10. Didn't have to pay a whole lot. I think just around -120 was what I had to pay. But I just feel so much more comfortable getting that full 10 than a 9.5. And I might not need it. That's fine. You don't have to pay the juice when you win. But I took the Dolphins here. And first of all, you and I both, Kiev, I'm sure we aren't going to necessarily throw all of our eggs in a basket just because a trend is a certain, says a certain thing. But this trend, I believe, is a very strong one. And I believe there's reasoning behind it. And that is a home dog that wins outright and then goes into the role of road favorite. And that's exactly what the Buffalo Bills are. Now, it's a little bit different. Of course, they are favored on the road at Miami. I understand. But because they won at home as an underdog when they were being undervalued maybe a little bit, are they now shifting into a role of being overvalued a bit? That's why I think that trend continues to play out against that road favorite more often than not, because it overshifts in the market. And we saw the Miami Dolphins hang with them in Baltimore, losing by 10. So why can't they keep this one a little bit closer? When I crunch all my numbers, I come out with exactly 10. When I just made the line on my own, I made 8. So yeah, Buffalo wins this game by 8. I'm fine. I played Miami. The other thing is Miami has extra rest. Okay, let's not forget about that. They were thumped by the Ravens last Thursday. So I don't know and we saw on the field the yelling and the screaming. There's disarray in that team. It's not pretty. I don't think the stock could be any lower on the Miami Dolphins right now. And after the Buffalo Bills slaying their dragon, beating the Chiefs, I'm not sure the stock could be any higher. So again, that adjusting in the market, I'll take the dog here, hold my nose, and hope it wins.
I don't disagree with that at all. And my number, even though I make it 10, it's a letdown spot for the Bills.
Right.
And, they beat the Chiefs, right? It's like they can kind of just look over Miami as more of an annoyance. And Miami could be annoying. You never know what you're going to get with the Miami Dolphins. It's like at first they hate their coach, and the second, then they play with confidence. It's so much weirdness going on down there. And Malik Washington makes plays. Waddle, I believe they kept him. He makes plays. It's just there's still guys on that. Devin Achin, he can run the ball really well. Bill's a little bit banged up with Oliver gone now on the defensive line. I can see I can see an offense like McDaniel backdooring anything when it's this big. I'm staying away, but I will say 10-point teasers are going to be the new thing. That's my prediction, and I'm already starting to play them. I'm learning from some other sharp people about them. The Bills bringing them down to a plus 0.5 covers a tie isn't the worst thing to do if you can tease some good teams. I think 10-point teasers is when you tease good teams, because good teams rarely lose by a lot, and they sometimes will blow teams out anyway. So I like them in a possible 10-point teaser, like Patriots, Bucks. What are you gonna do, man? Are you gonna talk me on or off something here? It's plus 2.5 staring at me. I already know that Bucky's not gonna play. Godwin ain't playing in my mind anyway. Of course, I'm not the team. 48.5 is the total, Brady.
Yeah, I made this number 2 in favor of Tampa Bay, so no real difference there. And then when I crunch all the numbers, I come out with Tampa Bay by a half point. Does that mean I'm going to run to the window and bet New England? Not really. You talked earlier about, maybe a sell high situation on Tampa Bay. I don't disagree with you. This is one I think where you really need to dive in heavy and look at the injury report. Because Tampa Bay's got it all over the place, and that's worrisome. They are coming off of a bye week. That's a plus, that's a positive, but a lot of these injuries remain. Godwin, Evans, Bucky Irving. And the Patriots are a team for me that I've had a tough time, wrapping my head around. It feels like it's the old Patriots of yesteryear when Tom Brady and Belichick were laying 8.5 points, and you're like, that's way too many, and they covered all the time. And here we are again, with the Patriots. Now, they didn't cover last week, and of course I stayed away. The Patriots are kind of one of those teams where I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. So I'm interested in this game. I think these teams are both really good and well coached and play good defense and stop the run. It'll be a good old smash mouth style football game that I'll be interested in watching, but I won't be betting it.
I'm going to take 2.5. I'm going to take it.
I really like what you said earlier about the teaser. That would make me feel very. I mean, that's always a good teaser move, no matter what. From 2.5 to 8.5, and I could get behind that.
I love teasing 2.5. I don't like teasing 1.5. I burn on 8s too much because teams now down 14 will go for 2. Yeah, they either make it or they don't, and then you're burned on the 7.5 point teaser. So I just do not like teasing 1.5. This is a wonderful teaser. Like, I might do 50.5. I might tease it. I'm going to give this out as a small play anyway for a star or so, just because I have a really good feeling that this Patriots team keeps rolling. And even though Tampa's off the bye, I still like the coach Vrabel a little bit better than Todd Bowles. So we just got to keep Drake May upright a little bit. And it looks like also that Christian Gonzalez is practicing. So they get one of their best corners. So we'll put that on over Godwin. Next game, we got the Ravens versus Vikings. Vikings plus 3.5, plus 4 in some books. Funny, when the circle lines came out, all the books just followed. This is DraftKings. This was 4.5 a little bit ago. Circle line comes out, flies right down to 3.5. There's enough 4s out there for me to call it 4. So I'm calling it 4, and it's a total of 49.5. This will probably be my write-up this week. I know and I've been on the Ravens the last few weeks. It was hard to quantify what they are without Lamar and Roquan Smith. Roquan is underrated to this defense, but this defense only goes from pure shit to averagey with Roquan. It's not like this Ravens defense that we used to see. This Vikings team, hard to quantify too, because they were also decimated by injuries to the quarterback and a bunch of defense. And you can say JJ McCarthy ain't Lamar. What are you talking about, Kev? Well, I know the difference between Carson Wentz and anybody. And that's a pretty big difference. And it shocks me that Carson Wentz is in this league. You can say that about Andy Dalton, Kirk Cousins, and Carson Wentz. You could throw them all away right now in the trash. But I don't want to talk too bad about them in case they have to hire me. It's not Lamar's fault that his defense sucks, but the last few games, they were outgained by the Bears. They were outgained last week by the Dolphins, or it was really close. It was like a misleading final score. Couple balls bounced their way, a couple calls went their way. Even before the injuries, this defense went 1-3 before Lamar and Roquan went out. So this defense is not stopping. And I will tell you this, a coach like KOC and Kevin O'Connell, now that he's also got his Blake Cashman in the middle, his Andrew Van Ginkel rushing the rusher, Brian Flores' last appearance against Lamar, he smoked him. Even with all the injuries, this defense still ranks 11th in EPA. The pass catchers for the Vikings, Addison, Jefferson, Hutchinson, that's at least as good as the Ravens. I might even give that edge to them. I'm saying +4, take it. Take +4 to me.
I hear everything you're saying, and it makes a ton of sense. I just don't think Minnesota is that good. If you look at some of their numbers, and we kind of touched on it earlier, I think Brian Flores and Van Ginkel is a big piece. You talk about that, and it is true that it's been hard to get a real handle on Minnesota because there's been different versions of this team. I mean, before last week, J.J. McCarthy had only played 6 quarters of football, I think, of this entire season. And I'm not sold that he's any good. He threw for 140 yards last week. I mean, what's that? You're right. He's got a great receiving core. The offensive line is getting healthier. The defense is getting healthier. But I'm just not so sure about this team. And again, are these numbers that I'm looking at, is that reflective of when Carson Wentz was in there and when these guys were injured? There's a lot of different versions that we have to try and sort out of the Minnesota Vikings. And it feels like this version of the Baltimore Ravens is the one that we saw against Buffalo to begin the year, and we expected to be, this team that we thought of in the offseason as well. I made it 4. When I crunch all my numbers, I come out with Baltimore -2.5. So, we're right there in that neighborhood, 2.5 to 4. Again, it's not where my numbers have me feeling, oh boy, this looks good. I just feel like we talked about earlier, I think Baltimore is a team that is surging, and I think Minnesota is a little bit fraudulent from what we saw last week. That's a division game. And you're right. O'Connell's great. Flores is great. They've got a lot of great pieces. But I just don't think they're that good. And I could see the Ravens winning this one by, 6-7 points. But it probably, with what the cases you're making, what my numbers are telling me, at the end of the day, it's probably a stay away. But if I had to play it, I'd be on the favorite.
Okay, well, that's a slight disagreement. That's fair enough. And it's good to disagree and get it out there because that's what these shows are for. It's not for a bunch of agreement. It's for people to have different views on things. And if everybody agreed, we'd all be killing. The books wouldn't even be in business. So we wouldn't even be able to get that. Let's go to the next game. We have the Giants at the Bears, my Bears. So I was sitting there staring at this line at 3.5 for a long time this week. I'm like, come on, sharp bettors. Come on, contrarians. Knock this to 3 for me. Knock down this. Wake up on like Tuesday or something, and it's at 4.5. I'm like, oh, great. It went the wrong way. 46.5 is the total. Now, this total should be way higher, but if you're looking at, I've been looking at the weather in Chicago. It is going to be 22, 25 mile per hour gusts. It's going to be very windy, and it's as bad in the passing game. But
yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, and that's a real factor here because the Giants don't have much of a running game. Chicago, DeAndre Swift has been a real shot in the arm. I think Ben Johnson has been the shot in the arm for DeAndre Swift. He's kind of returned to what he was, when we saw him really all the way back to Georgia. But the Chicago running game is pretty decent, and part of that's Caleb Williams as well. I'm just not so sure. And you're a Bears fan. I imagine you feel the same way. Are they really all about these, these games? How many? I mean, what is it? 5 out of the last 6 or something that they've won? Are they really that good? I don't think so. A good friend and mutual.
It's an early team. It's an early good. It's a good when you play a bad team, you smoke them. When you play a great team, you get smoked. It's that rising, trendy team with a good coach. Finally, I think that's what it is. But the problem with me it's hard to lay points past 3 with a team like this because their defense can give up. It's like, I
Totally.
love taking the dog with them.
Last week against the Bengals, I said on our football contest show, I said, I wish we could play totals in the contest because this one's going to fly over. They almost scored 90 points in that game. You're right. The Bears don't have a lot of defense. What they've been very fortunate with is turnovers. And I got to feel that's going to come back to bite them here. You can't just sustain that type of a turnover margin, I don't think, throughout the entire season. And if that doesn't happen for them, they're going to lose games. And so I felt the number was too aggressive. I made it 3.5. When I crunch all the numbers, it comes to 3.5. I think 4.5 is too many. I'm right in line with you that I don't feel comfortable laying that type of points with a Chicago Bears team. Probably one that I won't get involved with. The weather is funky and weird. The Bears are a good home team. The Giants, we know, have a lot of problems, but I do think the number is a little off.
I'm finding it hard to find 5 picks in the contest, and
right.
If I had $1 for every time I said that, my friend,
right.
I suppose if I was going to talk myself into using the Bears at 4.5 in the contest, it's because of one thing: the Giants rank 32nd in rush EPA on defense.
Correct.
And if it's a windy game and Ben Johnson doesn't get ahead of himself like he has with the Lions, throwing the ball too many times, you have to trust that. Then they should run all over this freaking Giants team. And they have Monagai and Swift. So I think Swift should be back this week, but they didn't need him last week. Monagai ran for 200 freaking yards against the Cleveland Browns. And this line's been blocking. This Bears offensive line's been fantastic. So my thing is that if the Giants can't move the game on the ground because their ground game is so bad, they're not going to be able to throw into the wind. So that's my handicap.
That's why I like the 49ers last week. Because I said the 49ers are so limited by injury, they have to lean on Christian McCaffrey. And what's McCaffrey going to do? He's going to run right through this Giants defense that can't stop the run. Sure enough, the Niners won and covered. So, yeah, I think you could probably use the same argument here this week.
And you know that the Bears' spirits are up and the Giants are pretty down for their big injuries to Scadaboo and Malik Neighbors. And the fact that they're kind of, they have they're 2-7, they're out, and they know that, and there could when it comes to that, these teams, everyone tries in the first, but once the game starts going away, they let it spin out of control sometimes, and that's why big favorites are usually pretty good towards the end of the season. Not saying we're quite there yet, but I'm looking at the Bears for a contest play. Let's move on to the Saints versus the Panthers. The Panthers are -5.5. The total is 39.5. Ooh, this number keeps growing. What about you? You have anything on this?
I got to give credit to Kellen Moore and the Saints staff. We know they tried Tyler Shook at quarterback last week. I think that was nothing that anybody did wrong. I think it's just experimental. They want to find out if they still need a quarterback or if he's their guy. I think he did okay. They were playing maybe the very best team in the NFL, in the Los Angeles Rams. I think this team comes to play every week. They try hard. They've been hurt by injury, lost one of their running backs, lost Eric McCoy across that offensive line. So that really hurts a team that already doesn't have a lot of talent to begin with. But I think the effort has been there, and they're exactly what we thought they were going to be. One of the worst teams in the NFL, but at the same time, they come out and put effort forth every week, and I got to hand it to them. And this is a division game, and now you're telling me that the Carolina Panthers deserve to be a 6-point favorite over anybody? That one's hard to swallow. A team that has been really an underdog for almost their entire franchise existence, and now you put them into the role of favorite. That's a tough change to make. Probably a stay away game for me. When I crunch all the numbers, I thought the game would be 4. When I crunch all the stats, I come to 4. So that's where I'm at. If I had to play it, I'd probably take 6 or 6.5.
I bet 4. I think it was 4.
You laid 4?
Yeah, I laid the points. One of my first plays. I laid 4.5. It's at 5.5. Kind of getting a little bit away from me. I think I make the number 6.25. I do believe that you have to punish the Saints a little bit for putting the worst quarterback in, which is Shook. He's awful, man. And if you really, I don't know well, I mean, Rattler's not good, but Shook is really bad, and they couldn't move the ball at all last week, and only in garbage time. And then the Panthers kind of are playing with a little bit of pizzazz right now. I almost feel like when the Panthers, like a team like that, the way they're beating teams like the Cowboys and the Packers, they're kind of like avoiding the letdown situation. They're kind of moving more in towards, hey, we're good now. Come and stop us. We're going to show you this week type thing. And it would not shock me to see them cover this. This Saints team is so decimated, and I think there's a lot of quit in them. I know that they have a new coach this year, and he's kind of on a honeymoon year. I'm not so high on that coach, to be honest with you. I think he had good situations on the Eagles when he won as offensive coordinator, right? I'm not gonna give it out at 5.5, but I will lean it at 5.5. Here's a weird one: Jaguars versus Texans. I have conflicts on this because I don't know what I'm going to get out of Davis Mills. My power rankings say Jaguars. My algorithm says Houston. I'm staying away.
Yeah, I may actually play the Texans in this one, and maybe, only via teaser.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if they won the game outright. Took a tough loss last week with CJ Stroud going out of that game and still nearly won it, only lost by 3 points. We know how good that defense is. Jacksonville, flying back and forth across the country, go to overtime last week. They're not that great. They're on the road here, and now they're in the role of favorite because CJ Stroud's not going to be in there. Davis Mills is a pretty darn good quarterback. It was just a couple of years ago that he was a starter in this league. And he looked pretty good in relief last week. A little bit of the fallen hero theory, when your star quarterback goes down, the rest of the team knows, okay, we got to rally the troops and, support our guy. And I could see that inspired effort happening here. When I crunch all my numbers, I made it Houston 4. And when I crunch all the numbers, I come out with Houston 4.5. Now that's with CJ Stroud. What's the adjustment for Mills? Is it 5 points? That's kind of what we're seeing, maybe 5 or even 6 points. I don't know if it's that big of an adjustment. I like the situation for the Texans. I think the disrespect is too much there, making them a 1.5 point home dog or something. I think it's ripe for a teaser play for sure. Maybe even money line or something.
It's the best defense in football when they're humming,
Yeah,
and that defense can take them to wins. So
yep,
I totally get what you're saying. Well, here's a way better game: the Cleveland Browns against the New York Jets. Dude,
way better.
Who's betting these Jets? There was at 2.5. Now it's down to plus 1.5. Who's betting them, man? I don't know.
That's what my numbers tell me. Where is this one here?
I don't even have numbers anymore on these Jets because I don't know what Quinton Williams and Sauce Gardner. I mean, now you got
right.
What's the team going to think? Justin Fields is probably playing for his next job as a backup for Lamar Jackson. That's where I think you should go. I don't know what to tell you about this game, man.
Yeah, it's an ugly one. And there's all kinds of stuff going on here. The Browns are off of a bye, which I think is good. I think that should, they should have a good effort here off of a week of rest. The Jets are off of a miraculous come from behind victory, their first win of the season. Is there a possible letdown there? I
Jets have a week of rest too, though, right? In the middle. I think the Jets came off the bye as well, right? Am I wrong?
No, they just beat Cincinnati last week.
Okay. The Bears played Cincinnati last week. The Bears just beat them last week because
shoot, are you right?
They both came off the bye. The Bears had that crazy comeback.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh,
So that was just last week.
Totally missed that one. You're right. So both teams are off of a bye. Okay,
yep.
that's weird.
Yep. It is weird. It's totally weird.
Well, I can tell you when both teams come off of a bye, games tend to stay under the total. Didn't happen last week with the Raiders and the Jaguars. Looked like it was going under the entire time until it wasn't. It's not under until it's over. Yeah, so and you could very well see these two teams staying under the total. But here's another. I like this angle here. A couple things. First of all, I made the Browns 1, so being a 1.5 or 2 point favorite, it makes sense to me because I think the combination of Sauce Gardner and Quinton Williams is probably worth 2 points. Those are very good defensive players. And, maybe some odds makers would argue it's more, maybe it's less. I figure 2 is a pretty fair number to assign to those two guys being gone. But here's another one for you that I think is interesting. The rest of those Jets players are now on notice that their job is not secure. Because if you're going to get rid of Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, then why aren't you going to get rid of the guy that, is the backup safety or something like that? I mean, it's like, okay, geez, they just got rid of our 2 best players. I better work hard here. Sometimes that inspires some teams. Sometimes that triggers effort when they see a couple of guys like that get fired, so to speak. So maybe you'll get something big out of the Jets here. But again, do I really want to invest in this team or the Browns? No, I'm with you. Pass.
Cardinals, Seahawks. Seahawks have been trash at home and amazing on the road. I can't figure that out. The Cardinals now, if they're going to name Brissett as not the backup, that scares me for Brissett, because once that backup gets thrown in there, now that makes them nervous. I'm staying away. If I had to bet it, I bet the Cardinals. I'm pissed because I should have bet the Cardinals. I stayed off the Cowboys on Circa last week, thank God. But I'm not going to almost bet the Cardinals and then lose on them the next week, if you know what I'm saying. So
yeah, I hear you. Yeah. I made the number 5, and then when I crunch the numbers, I come to 6.5. So, it's right there. I think the situation is very interesting, where people just saw the Seahawks beat the heck out of, I think it was the Commanders on Monday night, right? And so they kind of have that fresh in their minds. And then, like you say, they also saw the Arizona Cardinals upset the Dallas Cowboys very impressively, shutting down that high-powered offense. So, you have that recency bias on both sides here. The one angle that I think makes some sense here is the Cardinals were coming off of a bye. They had lost 5 in a row. And I like to bet on teams that go into their bye struggling, because the bye is good for them to reset and get things right. And it played out that way. They had a great game plan defensively against the Cowboys. Hats off to the defensive coordinator for putting that together, holding them to 17 points or whatever. And I have to believe that during that bye week, they knew that they were going to have a short week against Seattle on the road in a division game, and they also worked on this game as well. So I think that defensive coordinator probably, had a few items to pass along that were targeted towards Sam Darnold and the Seahawks and how they're going to approach this game. So I think that time off was not only used in the game plan for the Cowboys, but also here. Maybe that's enough of an edge to get to the window with Arizona, but not for me at this point.
All right, that's fair enough and well said. Lions, Commanders down to 7.5, total 49.5. I'm taking the Lions.
I'm with you, man.
I'm laying. This is going to be the one. If you don't take it, you're going to be kicking yourself. Look, this is a revenge spot, and you know how this coach Dan Campbell is with this team. They are going to get
man. God love him.
God love this guy. He's going to get their heads out of their asses so quick when they're facing the Commanders. The Commanders are sitting ducks. Their coach admitted how spad he screwed up. I don't even know how. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like him for being honest, but it still looks like crap to this team. And it's just like that. McLaurin's not going to play. I guess Debo's going to play, but it's not that hard to figure that out. Backup quarterback Mariota's okay of a backup, but dude, this is a firing Lions team that is going to take advantage and abuse this Washington secondary. And they remember this playoff loss like it was just yesterday. I'm seeing massive margin. I'm taking the Lions.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. And I know some people, and we've even seen the numbers start to come down a little bit on the Lions. I'm the other way. I made the number myself 11.5. And then when I crunch all the numbers, it comes out to 9.5. And we're seeing 8s in the market. I think the playoff revenge is real. And I think it's especially real for a coach, like you point out, like Campbell. But at the same time, part of my handicap here is, and it's pretty simple. I think Washington's an absolute mess. They're toast. So yeah, you take a team that we talked about earlier as I think one of the best teams in the NFL against a team that really is, I mean, they don't have anybody. Who are they going to hand the ball off to? Who are they going to throw it to? Who's going to throw it? I know Mariota's not that bad, but I just think this team is a train wreck right now, and not necessarily dissension in the locker room. I think Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury do a great job, and there will be times probably throughout the rest of the season that I'll be betting on them, but not here. I think this is a low of lows for the Washington Commanders right now, and the Detroit Lions, not only the playoff revenge, but they're looking to bounce back off of next week or off of last week as well.
100%. We are both locked into that. What could go wrong? Rams versus Niners. Niners plus 4.5, total 49.5. I'm going to be honest with you, man. The Niners just play the Rams hard. My numbers and injuries, and you can take all that and say, my numbers say Rams by 6, 7, 8 points. Forget it, man. I'm not betting them. This is too much of a rivalry, and Shanahan just knows how to win this game. And Sean McVay's kryptonite is Kyle Shanahan. It's just I can't touch it.
You're 1,000% right. And I made the number 4. When I crunch the stats, it comes to 7. And there's no way I'm running to the window to bet the Rams. I grew up a 49er fan, and I probably follow this team more so than I do I feel like I'm sometimes in touch with them a little bit more than the rest of the league. And, they're beaten and battered, but they just find a way to beat the Rams. Everything tells me the Rams should. I'll tell you another thing. I believe the general public is going to bet the Rams in droves here because, a lot of those people in Circa Survivor, 3,500 plus that got knocked out by the Niners on Thursday night, they're probably ticked off and they're going to the window and saying the Rams, this is payback, this and that. I think you're going to have a overwhelming amount of public support on the Rams here. Hey, our numbers are telling us that the Rams are the side, right? Nah, I just feel this will be a stay away. But if I had to bet it, I'd probably take the points.
Yeah, I would too. Just because I know how these go. It's like I would take the points, and that's a great way to put it. Well, here's your game, man. Have at it. Steelers, Chargers -3, total 45.5. Be honest with you, I lean the Chargers because I just look at the coaches, but I am worried about Alt, and I'm not doing anything else, but you're going to make a good point for the Steelers.
I think you make a good point about the coaches. I think Harbaugh is probably a much better in-game coach, and we know he's a motivator as well. Tomlin, we know, is a great motivator. Is he a great in-game coach? Not so sure. But I think both of these coaches are very good. They have different strengths and weaknesses. But I think I can argue that the Steelers might have the better team right now because we talked about it. Without Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt and Omarion Hampton, and now injuries in the secondary, I think what was once a really good-looking Charger team has been decimated by injury, and I just don't think they are the same at all. Let's not forget, when Joe Alt was out, this team barely beat the Miami Dolphins. They're just not the same club without those two guys on the offensive line. And it's a shame because they're two of the best in the world. And this team really could have been something with both of them there. But now you look at TJ Watt and Highsmith and all those guys last week that, forced all those turnovers against Indianapolis last week. What are they going to do to Justin Herbert and the Chargers with nobody to protect on that offensive line? There are literally third and fourth stringers on that offensive line for the Chargers. So I had to take the 3 here, Kiev. I'm not a huge Steeler lover. I like their offense. I'm not in love with their defense, but I think the injuries are too much to overcome for Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. They did do okay against the Titans without some of those guys, but that's the Titans. That's the freaking Tennessee Titans. The Titans are a pretty awful team, and they also didn't cover. They got backdoored by a field goal. That killed me last week too, so was not happy about that one. Can you tell me that the Eagles-Packers are going to be close? Because I want to tease both sides. I want to take 10 on the Pack, and I want to take 6 on the Eagles. I'm not going to lie. I feel like it's going to be a close game myself.
Yeah, my numbers come to Packers. Well, first of all, I made it 2.5, but the stats tell me 3.5. And I kind of lean Green Bay here. We talked about it earlier. I bet against Green Bay last week. The scheduling spot was awful. They came off of that huge Sunday night, narrative street game with Aaron Rodgers meeting his former team, and Jordan Love really, was the hero, just had an amazing night. And now they're going to play the Eagles on Monday night, and sandwiched in between was the Carolina Panthers. Bang, hello, wake up call. I think all along they've kind of been focused on this game, and I think they win it. I think I saw it come down to 2. There might be a 2 in the market somewhere, but I think it's a pretty good money line play on the Packers, and I don't mind laying it less than a field goal either. The other thing I have noticed in looking at all my numbers, I think Philadelphia is a little bit inflated. They seem to outplay their numbers, if you will. And I think they have issues on defense, probably more so than offense. We know on offense, the change in coordinator has caused some issues, but somehow, some way, Jalen Hurts is amazing, and he figures out a way he finds a way to figure it out. But I'm not sure this team is really as good as they sometimes appear. And the Packers are funny too. They've lost to the Browns. They've lost to the Panthers. Are they really all that? But I think this is a spot where they're going to get right and take care of a team that beat them a couple times last season.
That's fair enough. And it's such an interesting spot because the Eagles coming off that bye recharges them a little bit, right? Oh, man, I've been struggling about this one. I want to, like I said, I think the Eagles in the Patriots, right? both 2.5 point dogs. I like that teaser a lot, right?
I'd feel better about the Patriots leg, and maybe you combine it with the Lions. You and I both like the Lions. They could be a good teaser play going down. Now they're a road favorite, or no, are they at home? Yeah, no, they're a road favorite. But yeah, I don't know where to go with that Eagles teaser. I do like New England, I think, on a teaser.
Okay, because you make it 3.5, so it makes it more obviously out of teaser range a little bit. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of know what the Eagles are, and Saquon Barkley is a little banged up too. Apparently, you got to check that status. But I think the Eagles, they're that physical team that. They're going to have some issues on defense. They're going to score some points on offense. They're fairly predictable. They have been pretty predictable, where the Packers haven't necessarily been predictable. Now, I've won some money in betting against them, but I think I bet against them when they played the Steelers too, and they rolled them. So I don't know. I think they have the capabilities of probably rolling just about any team in the league. They beat the Lions earlier this year, right? I feel like it's the spot where the Packers are going to win this game.
All right, fair enough. That brings us to beer bet bangers, and this is just a little plus money action. You know what sucks is like I could take the cheap way out and say, just Minnesota to win outright, right? Because that's the only dog I really like this week. I don't like a lot of dogs, but I'm going to go with Ben Johnson to be coach of the year at 30 to 1.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, at 30 to 1, what's he doing at 30 to 1?
That does seem high.
It does. He's 5-3. I mean, supposed to be 6-3 after this week. Why wouldn't it be Ben Johnson? Now Kyle Shanahan's there and he's done a great job, but they never give it to Kyle. Mike Vrabel maybe. And Shane Steichen sitting there leading. But if you get bad Danny Jones for the next few weeks, that's going to tank. I don't know, man.
30 to 1 worth a shot.
31's worth a shot. And Mike McDonald's hanging out there, and I get that too. But beer bet on good old Ben Johnson, who before the season was favored. So we'll go Ben Johnson for some beer money at 30 to 1 and see if we can buy 30 beers. Like 30 cases. 30 cases of beer.
I go back to the timing being interesting. You asking me about the best 4 teams in the NFL, because I have 2 bets, and these I think qualify absolutely for beer bet banger. Okay. And you can find this at BetMGM. It's probably available on some of the the bigger national books like a FanDuel or a DraftKings or something like that. And that's betting on who will be the Super Bowl representatives. Now, I've looked at this in the past where you could just parlay two teams to win the AFC and the NFC conference. And maybe that's a better payout than betting this market. But when I checked it, they wouldn't let me do it. So I had to just buy into who will be the Super Bowl representatives market. The Chiefs against the Rams is 16-1, and the Bills against the Lions is 20-1. I told you, I think those are the four best teams in the NFL right now, in my mind. And I see down the line some of these other guys, the Ravens, the Seahawks, the Colts. I really like them to get to the postseason, but I don't know if they get all the way through the postseason against some of these more experienced teams. So let's take those four teams. Let's bet them. Let's pair them up as representatives to meet in the Super Bowl, and then cross our fingers and hopefully we have some hedging situations when we get to the conference championships or what have you. I mean, if this turns out to be your final four, you're sitting pretty, right? So
all right.
It's chalky, but I think it makes sense. Like you could have a good chance that 3 out of the 4 make it to the final 4. And then you probably have some maneuverability there to monetize. So
are you saying 4 bets, like one, like pair them up?
Yeah, you could even try that. You know, if it works out mathematically. I only did 2 bets. I did the Lions and the Bills at 20-1.
Be Lions Bills.
Wouldn't that be great?
Oh,
that'd be something.
It means one of those are finally going to break through, right?
And what a game it would be. It'd be incredible. And then Chiefs Rams at 16. You know, it's chalky, but it's chalky for a reason. I think those 4 teams have a good chance. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Hopefully it all falls into place and I have an opportunity. I think a lot of the times, I don't know if you do this, Kiev, but a lot of the times when I make futures bets, I just want to put myself into a position where I can monetize. I'm not necessarily saying they're going to win it all and this is going to happen, but I want to be in a position where I can cash out and make a profit.
Oh, that is the number one thing to do. And at least cash for something, you know,
that
is important. You don't have to try to split it 50-50. If you really love your side, you can cash for something, get out there, make a little bit of money back.
That's the name of the game, right?
Yeah. Triple your bet, you know, triple the size of it, make it a 3-1. And then, and then you're making money, making up for some of the lost ones too. So you got to do that. And you know, that's some great advice. And my man over here, Brady Kannon, has a ton of great advice wherever you can find him. Brady, could you let our listeners and viewers know where they can get your great information in place?
Yeah, thank you so much. You can find it right here on your podcast, of course, once or twice a year. Usually we do it maybe before the Masters, but during football season. So I certainly appreciate you continuing to knock on my door and give me this opportunity. But you can find me on Sports Grid. I'm on there all the time. As you are, you're usually on there with our friend Gabe Morency. But I'm on there on the weekends, during the week, talking football and golf. I write for CBS Sportsline. I write for golf.com. And then, of course, every Friday night, we really love our Las Vegas football contest show with James Salinas and Mike Pritchard. And let's not let it be a misnomer either. It's not necessarily just for contest play because we're breaking down every game. Now, we're talking about contests and what we're going to use in the contest and everything. But you can also very much use that information to just your own personal betting as well.
Absolutely, especially when the line's still what it is on Friday night. You're just basically handicapping games. Make sure you guys check out Brady. He's one of the best. Thanks again, Brady.
Thank you, my friend.